For the most part, a correct cast starts with the rod at 10 o'clock and ends with the rod at 2 o'clock. What is creep? Creep is a casting fault, and it is the source for a lot of confusion about casting. Well, here's what happens. Okay, I took my kid out the other day. I'm going to show him how to cast overhead with his two-handed rod. And so he gets it back, and then instead of letting the line go all the way back till it's unrolled, waiting, and then casting, it almost unrolls, and then he starts going forward. He starts going forward, and then he goes more forward, and then he casts like that. That is creep. It's when you try to make up for casting with improper technique, and you try to make up for that by taking up slack or tension by shortening your forward stroke, and then when it's time to hit your forward stroke, you have to whack it, and that makes your rod tip overbend. Your rod overbend, your rod tip goes down, you get a funky rod tip shape, and you get you usually get some kind of a collision loop or tailing loop. It's just ugly. It's ugly. Okay, so this is creep. So why is it a fault? Because it's creep. Well, why is it creep? Because it's a fault. Here's an example of creep. Instead of starting my forward stroke at 2 o'clock, the rod creeps forward, and then at about 1 o'clock, I hit it too hard, and the cast is a stinker. But really, it's just a different way to cast. Very useful if there's trees that you got to deal with, so you have a very short backstroke, and then you creep ahead to get away from the trees. Sometimes it's your only option, or sometimes you can creep just because you can, and if that's the intention and there's a purpose behind it, then in my book it's not a casting fault. Casting fault is when there's serious trouble with the cast. Here, instead of starting my forward stroke at 10 and ending at 2, I start at 10, creep forward, and then hammer the forward cast. The result is a terrible, ugly, failed cast. This isn't creep, but I punched the forward cast a little too hard. Forward cast should have a nice, smooth acceleration to a stop. Rod goes from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. This is correct, beginning the forward cast at 10, accelerating and stopping it at 2. Here's a sweep, a drift, up, maintaining my angle, and a forward cast. Here's a cast with a very wide casting arc. It goes beyond 2 and beyond 10, but it's correct. This cast has a tad bit of creep, and the result is a tailing loop tendency. If you watch most videos of some very good casters, so if you slow down somebody like Zach Williams, get a video of him casting, there's a lot on the internet, or Travis Johnson in his Skagit casting, any of those guys, you put it in slow enough motion and it's gonna look, or Ed Ward. Slow down Ed Ward sometime, even especially from a demonstration, it's gonna look like creep. Because slow motion can either really hide stuff good, or it can really make so people think, wow, it's slow motion, I can see everything. But it will hide some faults, and it will make it'll make most casts look like creep, because there's no real power in a lot of those casts till about midnight, okay? It just gradual acceleration starts here, and your real power starts when the rod's straight up and down almost for a lot of casters. I think mine starts back a little further, which is either here nor there, because there's guys that cast way better than me that cast different, obviously. But so you slow it down enough, it looks like creep. So you get somebody like Ed Ward, who has continuous motion casting. You slow it down enough, and sometimes it will look like he's creeping, possibly, or if he does a demonstration, it may look like creep. But slow motion will make a lot of casts look like there's creep. Anyway, this food for thought.